In today's episode of the Motorhome Mad podcast,
there's a lot of noise right now about Greece banning motorhomes and campervans. But what is the truth?
In the news, IQ Mobile is back.
And we answer your questions on retrofitting Isofix, Ford faults, and left-handed motorhome dealers.
What?
Left-hand drive motorhome dealers.
Welcome to the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
Industry insights, expert advice for the world of motorhomes, caravans and campervans. And it's brought to you by thatleisureshop.com and sponsored by Ripe.
Now remember, please do follow on your favourite podcast app, or if you're watching on YouTube, click subscribe.
We have a new camera set up. You can see me from this week in this camera, or this one.
And you can see me here, or us both here.
Straight into the podcast then. IQ Mobile has launched new products after IQ Go had roaming charges applied. You might remember our recent episode with them, after which change was applied. What change was applied then, Matt?
So it was a data usage cap. So we did this episode. You could buy an IQ Go SIM from IQ Mobile, use it in the UK, go to Europe, no restrictions at all. All your data was available to you. 2 weeks later, their network provider changed the rules. Really annoying. Anyway, they've reinvented themselves and they are back with a new product, which is great. So IQ Go is still going strong, which is great for the UK and EU still, but subject to a 20%, I think it is, data usage cap. It might be 25%, but there is a data usage cap on how much you can use. You don't need a VPN for UK streaming. It's just £20 a year, and then you just top up the data when needed, and it's ideal for light users.
Okay, so heavy-duty SIM then for roaming across Europe, is that right?
That's IQ Connect. So this is their new product. So this is for heavy users. There are daily data limits, but there's no cutoff. If you do use all the data allowance, which is high, it just slows you if you rinse it.
Can you just explain that to me again a bit slower? So can I use it? Can't I use it? How much can I use? When can I use it?
So IQ Go, you can use it in Europe, but there's a data cap. You only get 25% of your data. So if you buy 100 gig, you can only use 25.
And why is that? Can we just say why is that again?
That is the fair usage policy across Europe for non-territorial SIMs. So a UK going into Europe is restricted use.
And this is applied by the network providers, not by the IQ people?
Correct.
Right.
And this was the change. So IQ Go still exists. You can still use it. But IQ Mobile, the company behind it, have now launched IQ Connect, which is a data SIM where you can use all of your data. There's no cap. There's a cap per day, basically on how much you can use, but it doesn't cut off. And once you've used it, it just slows you down. So your connection speed will slow down. And you would need a VPN if you want to watch UK television from, say, Germany.
What's a VPN again?
Virtual private network. So something like NORDVPN, who have sponsored the podcast in the past. It's a great product for keeping secure, and it means you can tell the internet that you are in the UK, meaning you could watch Strictly on BBC, for example.
Right, so this IQ Direct, which is launched, there's no physical SIM card, because I'm used to taking bits of plastic in and out of my phone.
That's right. So this is an eSIM, so it's no physical SIM card. It's ideal for short holidays abroad. So if you're going away for a week in Turkey, it's just £4 and it will give you data for that trip.
So you download it as an app on your phone or on your device?
You add an eSIM to your smartphone. Dead easy to do. There's no SIM card. You just download it and instantly you're ready to go. And it's a cheap way of getting data abroad and managing your data and not getting charged for roaming.
How do I get it?
Dead easy. Head to helloiq.co.uk and there's a 10% discount code. Use the code MotorhomeMatt10. That's MotorhomeMatt10, one word, at helloiq.co.uk. Have you ever connected to campsite Wi-Fi and thought, how secure actually is this? I've been there, especially abroad, trying to check my bank or watch TV. And that's why I use NORDVPN.
So what does it actually do then for people who've never used a VPN?
Good question. Well, it creates a secure and private connection, even on public Wi-Fi. So your data is protected and you can stream TV like you're still in the UK. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, by the way.
That sounds complicated. Are you sure you don't need to be a tech genius to set it up?
Not at all. In fact, it takes minutes. And once it's running, you don't even notice it. It works on your phone, your laptop, whatever device you're using.
So if you're travelling and want to stay safe online or just want to watch your usual TV, it sounds like a smart move.
It definitely is. And we've got an exclusive deal for you. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, just go to nordvpn.com/Motorhome Matt.
That link gives you 4 extra months free on the 2-year plan, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free.
That link again, it's nordvpn.com/Motorhome Matt, and the link's also in the episode description.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast with me, Keith Gooden.
And me, Motorhome Matt.
Brought to you with thatleisureshop.com and sponsored by Ripe. Now, the main part of the podcast today, Greece is the word, You're the van that I want. Ooh, ooh, ooh. We're here to separate facts from fear-mongering, is what we always do here. We are your champion. The rules have changed and you need to be more careful about where you park. But no, Greece hasn't shut the doors to motorhomers.
I've seen loads of this. Clickbait. It rules the world, doesn't it? Greece no longer welcoming motorhomes. That's it. Full stop. It's not true. You can still go to Greece in your motorhome. The law has changed, though, on how you can use it there. So in January, on the 20th of January, a law was passed this year in 2025.
That's Law 5170.
There you go, if you want to know. And that restricted where you can park. So basically, they want you to take your motorhome to Greece and use a campsite. That's it. They don't want you to park anywhere else.
That's Greek law we're talking about.
It is Greek law. So let's just rewind a bit. So back in 1976, a law was passed, Law 392, if you want to Google it, which prohibited camping in forests, beaches and archaeological sites. And then in 2014...
Is that sandy beaches?
Sandy beaches.
Sandy. Yep.
Lots of Greece film references today. Love it. These are the best jokes you've ever come out with. Law 4276 was passed in 2014, which reinforced those restrictions. Plus, there was a Highway Code Article 34 in 1999, which meant you could only park in towns unless in a fenced, designated camping area. You could only park there for 24 hours. And this new law stops you doing that. So basically, it's reinforcing all the things that went before, but it's caused some confusion. Because what about going to a supermarket? I want to buy a pint of milk. I park my motorhome outside the supermarket. I'm in breach of the law. Are you? So this is the grey area. And the Greek government were asked, why have you done this? And their comment was, we are protecting public interest and reinforcing legality, was a comment from the ministry.
So what's actually changed then under this new law 5170/2025, which was introduced in January?
It's all about where you can't park. So they don't want you parking on beaches, so on the seafront, in forests or on archaeological sites. That's been the case forever. They don't want you parking in public parks, in urban squares, at supermarkets, or shop car parks, which is a bit weird. And they don't want you parking in towns or villages for more than 24 hours. So even in these places, a short stop is now potentially a violation. That's what's going on.
So basically, they want you to bring your motor home. They haven't got a problem with that, but you've got to go on a campsite and you've got to leave it there.
And you've got to get the bus or cycle, it would seem. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But how it's been interpreted is that motorhomes being banned from Greece, which is not true. They're just trying to manage where they're being parked. But of course, it's created some contention about, going for that pint of milk and that loaf of bread. Interestingly as well, on private land. So if you've got friends in Greece, you can park your camper van there, but they're only allowed to have one camper van or motorhome on their drive without needing a license. So if you've got 2 motorhomes visiting your house in Greece, you have to have a license.
But when you think about it, if in tourist areas in particular, that does stop people from renting out the front of their house or the back garden, as a sort of ad hoc motorhome park and taking money off people. You can see the thinking behind it.
You can see the thinking. And this is, I suppose, about the ministry trying to encourage people to use campsites. And I think there's been a kind of an invasion is probably unfair, but there's certainly been a massive increase in the number of campervans and motorhomes that are parking not on a campsite, so off-grid, and parking with a lovely view of the sea from the beach, parking in a park or in a town and village on that village square. And this is what the ministry are trying to stop. And this came to light because this rule in 25 was passed kind of without any consultation, and suddenly some campaigners to change the original rules were fined €300 per van, in fact it can be per person, for parking off-grid. And it's why am I being fined? And it's this is the new law, which they didn't know about, and that's offended people, and repeat offenders can face court and jail time of up to 3 months. So this is a serious rule. If you break it, there are big consequences. And interestingly, the police and the Coast Guard can now issue fines of €300 on the spot per person in your van. So it's a big deal, and there are serious consequences if you do break the rules.
But looking at it from a Greek point of view, if people are pulling up on nice beaches and parking, or in parkland, or in wild areas, when they really shouldn't be, and bedding down for the night, you can understand from the Greek point of view that actually these people are abusing hospitality, and so we're introducing these rules. Is it a big deal?
Well, the question is, should they have been? You say where they shouldn't be. Arguably they shouldn't have been because of historical rules that have been passed. But it's a big deal if you're in your van and you want to park and enjoy that spot. And I guess the ministry are stepping in to say, well, we own this land and we're now going to govern it, and we're going to actively stop you doing it by virtue of a fine or a prison sentence. And they want you to be on a campsite. So they are restricting where you can use your motorhome. And that's the contentious bit.
But is motorhoming, about bagging the best spot and being selfish about it and blighting an otherwise beautiful view with a big white van? I would say not, no?
Well, and that's a residential issue, isn't it? They probably spent millions of euros on that house on the seafront to enjoy that sea view, and suddenly there's this row of white boxes all parked along the pavement blocking that view, which is not very nice for those residents, perhaps. So there's an element of NIMBY going on here, but we need to coexist.
Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard,
Not
absolutely,
in my backyard.
But the thing is, this is not just a Greek thing. This is happening everywhere. It's increasingly happening in the Netherlands, in Luxembourg, in Switzerland. You are not allowed to off-grid camp, or wild camp as it mistakenly gets called.
Or pull into a lay-by and bed down for the night.
Yeah, and even in the UK here at home, overnight bans, we see them being reported all the time, don't we, in Scarborough and St Anne's. Plus, it's happening in Italy and Czech Republic. There are selective or de facto bans happening there. So Greece isn't banning motorhomes. They're just following, I think, a European and potentially a global trend of tighter regulation.
It's just stopping people from pulling up where they fancy it and doing what they want to do when they want to do it. And that's always been the case when we've parked our cars and such. Like, why are people? Why should they be exempted if they're going on holiday? What gives people the right to do those things? We wouldn't need these rules if people weren't abusing them, would we?
Well, that's a valid argument, yeah. And I guess campsites have been created for motorhomes and campervans. The problem is we've got this trend, haven't we, of motorhomes and campervans that are more and more capable of going off-grid. And this kind of, I predicted this at the beginning of the year, there will be a huge trend of people that don't want to go on a campsite. And I think part of the problem, less so in Europe, but certainly here in the UK, is campsites have not innovated enough to attract us back to their campsite. It's a field with a toilet block, which was updated 10 years ago, and they want to charge us 40 quid to spend the night there. Frankly, it's rubbish. And I would much rather spend the night in a car park with a beautiful view of a lake or the sea and have a free night there.
Because you can.
Because I can. Now it would seem I can't. Yeah. And I think it's a double-edged sword, this, where I think campsites need to be supported by government and by local councils, and they need to get their finger out and start attracting motorhomes and campervans to new locations. The boom in this pastime is off the scales. But
these restrictions and these bans around the world, they're not going to encourage campsites to improve things, because they think, well, they haven't got a choice. It's €300, I'll pay €40 to stay on my rubbishy old campsite. campsite? I'm sure there's some very good ones as well.
There are some really lovely campsites everywhere. And I have stayed, to be fair, to the UK campsites. I have stayed in some really lovely ones here in the UK, and especially on the continent, where the value, it seems, you get there is massive compared to the UK. But I still make the point. I think the campsite industry has been very slow to respond to this growing trend. And I tell you what's interesting is recently at Campervan Campac, we saw thousands of campervans, hundreds of motorhomes campervans that have been self-converted, and the number of people that had done them themselves and were living in them full-time or for long periods of time was amazing. And the end product they created was phenomenal. I was really impressed. And also the thing that struck me is the number of people who were silver surfers, let's call them that, retirement age, so had a home, bricks and mortar house, sold it or rented it out, and were now living in a van. And that van probably cost £100,000. And I think this is all about the gentrification of van life. I think it has changed. I watched the video that Urban Motorhome, Darren, a friend of ours, put out. And 7 years ago, he started living in his motorhome full-time. And people would say to him, "Molly, what do you do for a living?" "I'm a truck driver." "Where do you live?" "Oh, I live in my van." And the response was, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully life will get better for you." He said, "No, you're joking. This is my choice. I'm living my best life.
This is my house.
This is it. Yeah, I'm loving it." And I think there's been an attitude shift. I think now if you say, "Oh, I live in my motorhome full-time," people now generally would say, "Oh, wow, I'd love to do that." And there's been a big acceptance of van life. I think living in a van, whatever it's like, it could be a Transit with a mattress in the back, it could be £100,000 or more Heimer or something very lovely like that. I think the acceptance of it, it's become aspirational. And I think there's been a massive shift in a relatively short space of time. I mean, living in a van, in a camper van, has been around since the 60s, isn't it? You go back to the hippie era of the 1960s, and it was generally the pastime. You'll remember this. I'm looking at you because I don't. I'm too young.
I was very small in the 1960s. It was about making do, as you say yourself. You might have had a combi van or something in the 1960s or 1970s and a bucket. It's true though, and a frying pan over a camping stove. But as you were saying just a little bit earlier in this podcast, the technology has enabled people to live reasonably luxurious lifestyle in the motorhome or in a van, and also they can work from it. The connected environment we're in now means you can live your everyday life and you don't need a bricks and mortar home.
And this is the other big impact of the lockdown, the pandemic, is that everyone was forced to work from home, and people thought, well, actually, I don't need to work from this house. I can work from my van. And that changed everything. So there's a whole load of things have conspired together, and this big catalyst kind of happened where van life became the accepted norm. And it's now become aspirational, for people who've worked their entire life and have a desire to sell up or rent up and go and travel in a van. Yeah,
they might have a home worth a couple of £100,000 and sell it and buy a camper van or a motorhome for £100,000 and put £100,000 in the bank and live off the money while they are free to do what they want. Or, well, if you go to Greece, not so free.
Not so free. And I'm one of those. I'd love to do that. I'd love to get the business here to a point where I could take a long period off and go and travel in my van, effectively living in it for 6 months or a year. That's aspirational for us. It's something we intend to do, to go travelling. And motorhome's a great way of doing that. But of course, there's lots of sides to this. You've got kind of van dwellers and van lifers, and they are very different groups of people. And we live in Bristol, and here we've got a massive story here of, I think it's 850 vans and caravans in the city of Bristol, people who are kind of living in that circumstance because of no choice. Or maybe it is their choice.
They can't afford a flat or a house.
Yeah, they can't afford the deposit, so a caravan or a motorhome camper van is the cheaper alternative. And Bristol has a challenge, and it's still trying to figure out how to deal with it, and they're doing it through penalising these people and making them move on.
And we're not talking about travellers here.
No.
An ethnic group. We are talking about people who have made the choice because of accommodation issues.
Yeah,
or they just want to do it.
And I've spoken to some of them. I've seen lots of stories in the press. They get up in the morning and they put a suit and tie on and they go to work in an office, as everyone else is doing, but they live in a van. And it's a lifestyle choice either imposed on them or one they've made in order to survive and thrive in the city of Bristol. That's a different group of people. But that has become another way of people engaging with this hashtag van life. And it is grown at every level, both these young millennials, if I can call them that, 20-somethings are pursuing this lifestyle. And then you've got these silver surfers who also want to pursue this lifestyle. And more motorhomes on the road than ever before, and many of them being lived in full time. And that's why I think councils are responding to it with kind of force, brute force, and trying to impose laws. What we need is more integration between the communities that want to spend time in their van, the campsites, the places that want to host motorhomes and camper vans, pub stops, so Brit stops are booming. We need all these brands to kind of rethink what we're doing and why we can't join the dots, especially in the UK, with the introduction of official places to stop. So we call them airs in Europe. Why councils can't do this, I really don't know. I don't know why we don't do it. We just seem to have this inability to embrace one another and work together, and I don't get why.
Let me drag you back to Greece, to Carpathos, which I understand is very popular with van lifers.
It is. It was, especially kite surfers. And the challenge here, this is a Greek island. There is no campsite on this island, and it's really popular with people that want to go there in a motorhome or camper van. They now can't. No,
they can't, because there's nowhere to stay.
Yeah.
A place called Aphiatis, isn't it?
Aphiatis. So, I knew you'd do it. I knew it. I knew it. You couldn't resist, could you?
Technically, there's no campsite, so they can't pull up to the beach because they might get a €300 fine. So, in Carpathos, do they just want to kill the tourist industry? Do they want to destroy this group of people who are enjoying?
I don't know if they want to, but they're going to. This is a segment of tourism that is no longer going to visit that place. Will the Greek ministry realise this and back down? There's an opportunity there, surely. There's an entrepreneurial opportunity for someone to go and set up a campsite.
Absolutely.
There.
I was just going to say that.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, the Greek sun.
I just need an acre. Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll happen. And this is what I'm talking about, is there needs to be this kind of joined up thinking where surely, is there a space on this island that somebody could set up Carpathos camping? And then that would mean that motorhome camper van living people can go there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been there, so I won't be going there in a motorhome at the moment.
Let's get some practical tips for you there, because people are going to hear this and they're going to think, I can't go, I'm not going to go. Or even worse, they start paying attention to these keyboard warriors who really just put any nonsense out there.
It's clickbait.
I'm sure some people like the attention, just sit at home and go, and just say yes to this and no to that and just cause distress and confusion. So your practical tips now, what should people do?
Plan ahead, especially in the busy months. So book sites and use apps to do it. There's loads of apps. Park for Night is brilliant. Camper Contact is another one, but check the local laws. So Google is your friend. So there's loads of apps you can use to go and find these campsites and use them and book them and plan ahead. If you are going to wild journey and just say, well, let's see what we find, you need to know the laws, because if you're not allowed to park on the side of the road or in that village square, you need to be on a campsite. If there's no space, what are you going to do?
Tavernas?
I guess so, but then they run the risk, don't you? If the law is you're not allowed to park outside the taverna,
but if you've got land, they can let one van on, can't they?
If they give you permission to park there and it's private land and it's the only van in Greece, you can stay there.
Now they might charge you for that.
They might charge you for that, and I wouldn't blame them if they did. And I can see that loads of tavernas in Greece are going to see this as an opportunity, and maybe they'll apply for a camping license. Maybe suddenly Greece is going to be blessed with loads of campsites where taverna owners go, we got a car park, we can get 10 motorhomes in there overnight, let's get a license. I don't know what the license is going to cost, but let's have a campsite, let's do it. And maybe that's how this is going to change. But don't assume that it's only one night off grid and that's okay. It's not. You are not allowed to do it unless you are on an allocated space.
Yeah, don't assume that.
Yeah, and always, wherever you're parking, leave no trace. Follow the rules.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast with me, Keith Gooden.
And me, Motorhome Matt.
It's brought to you with thatleisureshop.com.
And sponsored by Ripe. Get 15% off your insurance premium by using the code Motorhome Matt over the phone, or simply click the link in the episode description.
It's time for the Q&A, the questions and answers, where you ask the questions and Motorhome Matt, it is he, will give you the answers. If he doesn't know, he'll ask somebody who does. Daryl Carter is in Chichester.
Hi Matt, it's Darryl from Chichester. Thank you for this week's episode regarding seatbelts. Very informative. We're just about to take delivery of our C55 Rapido, and as you're probably aware, it's got the front-facing lounge with the 2 seatbelt seats. And of course, we've got grandchildren and would like to know whether there is an option to add Isofix to these seats as an aftermarket option. I don't know if you know anybody or where you can get the Isofix added, or if it's possible. Any information would be greatly received. Thank you very much.
There you go then, Matt. Isofix. I know when it was introduced in cars, it caused me a bit of confusion, because up to then, child seats in the back were secured with the seat belt going through a loop and all the rest of it. And then Isofix are these like metal tags which are hidden down in there in the right angle between the back of the seat and the front of the seat. That's what he's talking about, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And oddly, many motorhomes don't have it. It seemed to be years before the motorhome industry adopted them. And even now, it seems to be random as to whether they have got them. I think family targeted motorhomes do, and you can usually tell if they have, because there's a little like button right at the bottom of the seat back that says Isofix on it. So if you're looking at motorhomes, that's the thing to look for. It is legally possible, so long as you've got a legally travelling seat in the back, then you could add Isofix to it. It is a case by case scenario, because it depends on how the seat frame has been manufactured and how those seat belts are fixed to it. They can either be bolted to the seat frame or possibly welded.
Really bolted? I'm surprised about that.
So there are aftermarket kits that you can buy. If you Google it, you'll find loads of them for under £100. But it is about the right kit for your motorhome. And motorhome seat frames are very different to car seats. So I would definitely investigate a professional to do this. Take all the cushions out, look at the seat frame, look at the ones on offer, and see how you could fix them in. You've got to remember that child seat is fixed to those little clips, and how they are fixed to the seat frame is critical in an accident. So it needs to be really secure, either bolted or welded, but don't be shy and get someone professional to help you do it.
But most child car seats will have an Isofix, but you'll be able to use the seatbelt, as I said before.
Yeah, it depends on the type of car seat.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case that an Isofix car seat will go in a non-Isofix car seat. That is a pain when you're transitioning grandkids from car to car like we do. I hate Isofix car seats. Getting them in and out is a nightmare. I fall out with our Isofix car seat all the time.
And they were invented to make life easier.
Apparently so.
Thanks, Daryl. Karen Cotter's in Carmarthenshire. They're looking to buy another motorhome. She says she's worried about the Ford faults everyone complains about, such as the injectors and the wet belt. You mentioned that a few podcasts ago. Yeah. Same for the Peugeot and Citroën. Is our instinct right to stick with Fiat? We had our last motorhome 11 years without a single issue. If the others are so bad, why are so many manufacturers changing to Ford?
It's a good question. I think the issue was Stellantis Group, that owned Fiat, Peugeot, Citroën and many other brands, imploded during the lockdown and had no stock, and Ford did. And so many motorhome manufacturers started building on Ford, but they also started building again on Merc. So Mercedes, MANs have made a kind of return to the market. And this is why there's been a big move to Ford, and they really have started to dominate the motorhome market. In fact, they've made it their agenda to do just that. And we've had Ryan Bowditch, haven't we, on the podcast a few times now.
And it's because they've got such, well-developed chassis, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The Ford Transit is tried and tested over decades.
And it does lend itself well for a motorhome, as the Stellantis chassis do, so particularly Fiat, with their what's called a ladder chassis. It's ideal for it. But you're right. The Ford issues are real. The wet belt is a stupid design.
Yeah, what is that again? Just describe it one more time, because that struck me as really odd.
It's a cam belt, which we know a cam belt you should change. If the cam belt snaps, you write your engine off.
Yes.
So the top of the engine ends up meeting the bottom of the engine, basically.
Very quickly.
Yeah, instantly.
Yeah, with explosions.
And it's happened to me. I had a cam belt snap on me and the car just came to an instant halt. So the cam belt should be replaced, and the intervals for changing vary from car to car. The Ford manufacturing idea was to create a cam belt that is inside the engine, not outside, but in the engine, in the oil. And they made a rubber. Now, oil makes rubber degrade. So Ford had the idea, let's put some fibre inside the rubber belt to ensure that when the rubber dissolves, the fibre dissolves as well, and then blocks all the oil ports inside the engine. It's a ridiculous idea.
Why couldn't they use the metal chain?
There you go. So that's called a timing chain, which is a brilliant idea because that has an adapter that tightens it, and you can replace that. So the tensioner, it's called. So why didn't they use a chain? Now, you can upgrade your wet belt to a chain. It's quite expensive. Or you can replace the wet belt, which is also very expensive. And when that wet belt snaps, engine over. That's it. You need a new engine. So it's a serious fault. The diesel injector fault, they fail. There's a whole batch of them that kept failing. And the other issue is the rain gets down into the injector, which means they seize into the engine head. So you can't get them out. So when they fail, they're locked in and you end up snapping them off. So 2 issues there. But that said, it's not plain sailing with Stellantis either. So Fiat have had loads of reported issues with the EGR valve, the diesel particulate filter, lots of issues with Fiat. So none of them are immune to this.
Yeah, they're machines. They go wrong sometimes.
They are mechanical, electrical they're machines. They're exactly that. And things fail. So I would suggest, don't be put off for buying a Ford motorhome at all. You may not have a choice. If it's the layout you want and it's only available on a Ford, you're having a Ford. But look at the service history and plan to maintain it properly. Change the oil frequently as per the manufacturer's instructions, and when the wet belt needs doing, do it. It's going to cost you $1,000, but do it. Plan for it and do it. But don't be put off by any Ford issue. Even Volkswagen have issues. Our VW T6 AdBlue, what a nightmare that is. I've now deleted mine out of our VW.
Is that made out of pig's wheel or something?
No. We've covered this before. It's not. And why pigs? Are they easier to catch? So base your motorhome choice on the layout and the design of the back of it, the living area. And if there's a choice on chassis, great. If there isn't, don't worry about it. Go for it. Make sure you've got service centres. Someone asked me a really good question yesterday, and they left it on the podcast. We might include it in the future. But they asked us, should I consider this make a motorhome? And it's built on a particular chassis brand. And I said, check your service centres for that chassis brand. There aren't many around you, to my knowledge. And they hadn't even considered that. And so it was a decision they put off to wait for another brand of chassis to come along. So consider that and make sure you follow the service schedule.
There you go, Karen. Yeah, for the service schedule, because if you don't, and you leave it 5,000 miles over when it says to change something or maintain something, your insurer might have something to say about that if you make a claim. Pete Hatfield is in Weston-super-Mare. Hi, Matt. We're planning to purchase a used motorhome to travel through Europe, returning to the UK within our 90-day window. We would like a left-hand drive vehicle as we intend to emigrate to Spain in the near future and would be taking it with us. Can you recommend anyone who specialises in left-hand drive motorhomes based in the UK, or should we consider purchasing a used motorhome from a Spanish dealership? Thanks in advance, and as always, we love the podcasts.
Oh, thanks, Pete. That's very kind of you. I don't know any left-hand drive specialist motorhomes. There was one around years ago, but they didn't survive. Probably they would these days. I would suggest, if you're shopping in the UK for a left-hand drive motorhome, look for one that sells new or used European motorhomes, because they may have taken them in new as left-hand drive ahead of the right-hand drive models being available. So we were, when I had my motorhome dealership that we sold new, we had the Leica franchise, and very often the case was Leica would produce all the models in left-hand drive. We'd bring them into the UK, and it would be 6 months or a year before the right-hand drives became available. So we'd often launch the new model on a left-hand drive chassis, and that's often the case when you go to shows, in the NEC, for example, where it's all new motorhomes, you often see European manufacturers with only left-hand drive available at that point because it's been launched and the right-hand drive is not available yet. So I would consider shopping around for European models. Used ones in the UK, you may find left-hand drive, but obviously in Spain, they're probably all going to be left-hand drive. Left-hand drive in the UK tends to take longer to sell, and they tend to be a little bit cheaper because there's less people that want them.
You might get a deal.
So you might get a better price in the UK if you can find one.
I watched Wheeler Dealers. They did a swap out. They converted a European Transit to a British one. They swapped over the side, left-hand to right-hand drive.
Yeah.
And it was a question of, a template and drilling more holes and a couple of bits of welded metal. And hey presto, it was done. Is that not an option?
It could be an option. Really, though? I mean, that's time-consuming and expensive.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Where that leaves you with warranty, I have no idea. If it's old enough to be out of warranty, then yeah, maybe it's a good project. I imagine that would make good TV more than it would make good common sense.
If people want to get in touch with you, then Matt, what should they do?
We love it if you did. If you have a question, you can ask it at mhmp.info/ask Matt. We'd love it if you recorded your question. Please tell us where in the world you are. You just click the orange button, record it. You can listen back to it. And when you're happy, just press submit, and then we'll play it into the podcast for you and hopefully answer it.
And if you're looking for trusted brands and services, then make sure you visit the Motorhome Matt approved directory. It's at mhmp.info/approved.